Good evening, and it is time for the main event, the Franchise Players Championship pregame special. JP Mundy along with my tag team partner, Ryan Stone, and the man who is now the North Carolina A&T beat writer, the man who covers 742 different high schools, the next head coach of the Carolina Panthers, and perhaps the next athletic director at West Virginia University, Joe Sirera from the News and Record. How are you, sir?
I'm doing all right. I don't have all those tasks, and in fact, WVU has hired an athletics director from North Texas, a gentleman named Ren Baker, but I'm open to other options.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I know you're not busy at all, so you could probably coach the football team since they're going to keep Neil. But I digress. As we speak, as our listeners hear this, we are all hopefully, happily, warmly ensconced in Kenan Stadium, getting ready for tonight's 4A final between Grimsley and New Bern. But on Saturday, it's another busy day for Triad Soups, Sports, whatever it is, man. It's been a long week. Mount Airy and Tarboro, or as you're supposed to say it in Edgecombe County, Tarboro. You pronounce it Tarber, Tarboro. And 2A Reidsville Reidsville's in the 2A final against East Duplin, and I think that's near Jacksonville.
Duplin County is loaded with football powers. Wallace Rose Hill was Reidsville's opponent a few years ago. North Duplin has been in a state championship recently. There's a lot of football down there.
So our Granite Bears from Mount Airy have had a great season. Again, this time they get to play to finish their season on a championship note. Unfortunately, Tarboro, the Vikings have 5 straight title game appearances, and they've won 4 of them, including the last 2. And they run some variation of the veer, which is not unlike what we're going to see on tonight with the Grimsley and New Bern. So I would imagine, Joe, in your experience, is this a lot of these 1A schools, your small schools, have to run this type of offense, right? Just because of numbers?
Yeah, and it's kind of they're more. I think they're more kind of beholden to tradition. It's a wing T that really both that East Duplin and Tarboro run. I mean, Tarboro, they call it the Tarboro T, and the Duplin County schools, Rose Hill, Wallace Rose Hill, East Duplin, North Duplin, all run some variation of the wing T. And, for comparison, Fritz Hessenthaler, the Southern Alamance coach who was at Southeast Guilford, that's what he runs. That's what Charlotte Catholic brought up here to play Grimsley in the state playoffs this year.
You know what? If we, a lot of people have complained about the length of games. If we could get some of our local guys to just implement the triple option, we could be like game time. We could kick it at 7, be done by 8:15. And finally, and maybe find something decent to eat after the game. Reidsville, this is their 6th finals appearance in the last 7 seasons, which sounds right. There's a lot more appearances for Jimmy's guys in that finals in the championship scenario. East Duplin was their last, and I think their only appearance was in 2017.
Correct.
This Rams team is one that's used to playing on a big stage. I can't imagine playing in front of a few hundred people every night max, and like in a 1A setting, and then your last game of the season, you bring the entire town with you to a big college football stadium.
Don't sell those Duplin County crowds short any more than you'd sell a Reidsville crowd short. Everybody in those towns is there. East Duplin is in Beulahville, North Carolina. You best believe everybody in Beulahville is there on a Friday night. But the big stage is different. It's artificial turf for the games at Kenan. That makes a difference. The fact that Reidsville and Grimsley have both been there in the last 3 seasons is a huge thing.
It's going to be a great night for the Triad because, and we're going to get to the previews for the Charlotte area teams that are in the finals this weekend. Wait, hold on a second. This just in. There will be no Charlotte teams playing this weekend.
You can do that during your commercial break. Yeah.
Shots fired.
Shots fired. After 4 straight weeks of it, and I made the mistake, guys, of going on the NC Preps message board, and there is a thread on there from the Grimsley Huff game that is still active. There's like 7 pages worth of stuff. People are hot, man. The Huff game wasn't even last week's game.
People care, and that's the great thing about high school sports and football in particular. People care, and that's why we do what we do, and it's why these kids can become legends on a Friday night.
It's so awesome to watch, and sometimes we get lost in all the other stuff, like people holding out for money, and I'm glad the officials got paid and all that, but all the political stuff that surrounds high school football, the players really have written a fantastic story this season, and it's going to be a fun weekend. Some news that came in this week, talking about your smaller schools. I had an inkling that Mark Holcomb was going to not be at Oak Grove next season, but I had zero inkling that he was going to be the new head coach and assistant AD at Bishop McGuinness, my alma mater. I think the Villains about to be pretty good in football.
I don't think they could have gotten a better hire, better person for the job. He knows what the challenges are there. They've won one NCHSAA playoff football game in school history, but as he pointed out, they've had a lot of success in other sports. They have had a decent season recently. It wasn't that long ago. I think it was 2018 that they got that playoff win. It's a great hire for Bishop McGuinness, and it's a cool opportunity for a guy who obviously loves to build. He built the Oak Grove program along with a ton of other people, and he credits them and doesn't want credit himself, but he was the guy there. He's going to be building again at Bishop McGuinness.
And it's not like you can't win at the public school level as a parochial school. God knows we've talked about Charlotte Catholic enough between the three of us. That's still, no matter what the results were this season, that's still a power that you don't want to play at any point during the playoffs in most years. Mm-hmm. So Bishop obviously needs some more dudes.
Yep.
But this isn't quite the opportunity, and I thought it was. You've already mentioned it. But Mark mentioned that it was important to see how much success the other programs at the school had demonstrated over the years. Mm-hmm. And I think that just translates to the commitment to athletics, which their athletic director Jeff Stoller certainly is committed to the athletic side of it.
Yeah, no question. And they're going to do it the right way. And that sometimes that means the build is slower and the process takes longer, but it also means that when you do get there, it's sustainable. And I think that's a big part of what they want to have there. And certainly in girls basketball with Brian Robinson there, it has been sustainable. They won another state title this past spring. They're loaded again. Everybody pretty much is back from that team. And, that team and the Northern Guilford girls are clearly far and away the two best teams in the Triad. It's just unfortunate they're not going to play each other. But, Bishop has had great success in a lot of sports. It can be done there.
And I'm wondering if this type of move, coming off the season that he had and his reputation, I wonder if this might be the move that's a catalyst for change when you start talking about coaching compensation for some of the local school districts. Ryan, I don't know, were you up in the booth with me on Friday when Ethan was talking about the fact that Daryl, I had no idea that the coaching stipend in Forsyth and Guilford County ended after week 10. So he and his staff have been coaching 6 weeks for free.
Yeah, and they essentially coach for free all through the off season, because anybody who doesn't understand that competitive top level high school sports, just about any of them are a year round sport now, they're mistaken, and the coaches have to be engaged and involved year round. It's a full year job, and they're not paid as if it was. And it needs to change, but that's an administrative thing, and there are a lot of other issues that these school boards and superintendents are dealing with.
Ryan, were you shocked when you heard that from Ethan?
Yeah, I didn't. I don't think I realized that they didn't get paid in the postseason. I knew I knew what Joe just said, that they only get paid for the season they're in. I did not realize they did not get paid for the postseason. But I guess when you're paid on a stipend, I guess that is kind of how it has to be, because you don't know if you're going to make the playoffs or not. But
Exactly.
there probably needs to be some kind of bonus built in, I guess.
Yeah, that's a great way to do it.
And again, to go back to our friend Adrian Snow's point that he made on Titans Talk, the last episode of this season, we obviously know, and Joe knows this very well, North Carolina's teachers need to be compensated for what they do. They are severely, severely undercompensated. And then when you start looking at those who also coach, you know, I've had many people tell me that a high school football coach, the football team is one of the leading dropout deterrents in the school system. And these guys put in hour after hour and after hour. And, you know, some of these school districts, yes, they are on 11-month contracts.
Mm-hmm.
So that doesn't need to be addressed. But some of these guys who are on 9-month contracts and a regular season stipend, I hope that we can find a way to include that kind of increase for everyone. But I don't know the answer.
There has to be some will from the voters who elect the school boards and the school boards who appoint and retain or replace the superintendents. That's the bottom line. They're the only ones who hold the purse strings, and ultimately the voters decide that. So, you know, we got to hope, because we know how hard these folks work, and it's not just football. It's boys and girls basketball, boys and girls soccer. It's all the sports. They are all year round now. And anybody who doesn't understand that has never heard of travel ball and all the other things that off-season workouts, because you have to do that just to be competitive.
Joe, you were at the board of directors meetings this week.
Actually, I wasn't.
You weren't?
I was not.
Which beat were you on? I gotta know.
I was. That was last week, and I was working on some feature stories on Grimsley and Reidsville.
You know what? You made the right choice. Well, let me tell you what happened. They're talking about seven divisions.
It's not going to happen, because 75% of the principals would have to vote in favor of it, and they can't even get 75% to vote. Period. It's not going to happen. That's just the reality. No, that is the reality of it. You know, there was a vote. Gosh, it's probably 10, 12 years ago, maybe even 15 years ago. There was a vote to expel the 3 non-boarding parochial schools that were in the NCHSAA at the time.
Yep.
There's 4 going on 5 now, but at the time it was Bishop McGuinness, Charlotte Catholic, Cardinal Gibbons over in Raleigh. And the majority of the people who voted to expel them, but they didn't even get, not even 50% of the principals or superintendents voted. And that's an issue. That's why the NCHSAA bylaws requiring that make it almost impossible to make major tectonic shifts, to make major changes. It's darn near impossible. And I would be stunned if in February, when that's voted on by the schools, that it passes.
It amazes me, Ryan, that Grimsley has already played a season and a half of football.
Yeah.
In the span of a couple of months. I don't know if that's right or healthy in any way. But, you know, we're happy that Grimsley and everybody has made it, and there's not a lot of injuries to talk about, but that's a lot of football games for 16, 17-year-olds.
Yeah, I mean, we've been going now for almost 4 months since the season started. This will be like a week shy of 4 months of high school football, I think.
Yeah,
once everything's finished up this weekend. So I mean, it is a lot. I mean, I don't know. I guess the only answer to that would be shortening the playoffs and lessening the amount of teams that make the playoffs. But that's a huge money issue, and when it comes to especially revenue for schools. So I don't know how you would necessarily get people to be on board with that.
Yeah, I mean, I think there needs to be more divisions, but I don't know how to do that. I certainly don't want to add more divisions so more teams could get the playoffs. Because then we'll have 2 and 8 teams getting into the fill out 2A playoff spots, and I don't know that I'm interested in any of that.
Yeah, I mean Bishop McGuinness would have been in this year as a 1 and 9 team, but declined. So they would have been the 32 seed in 1A West. They declined, and it was a bye because there was no one else who was willing to play.
I just there's got to be a solution, but going back to Joe's original point, for any of this to happen, there needs to be some sort of inkling of an interest at the local school board level across the state for us to move any of this forward. But we're going to move it forward. Coming up, we are going to talk about our game of the week / game of the year, the 4A final between Grimsley and New Bern when we come back on the Franchise Players, powered by Tobacco Road Sports Radio.
Franchise players are often referred to as the face of the franchise.
Welcome back to Franchise Players. JP Mundy, Ryan Stone, Joe Sirera joining us. As I mentioned, this is a pre-recorded segment, and hopefully, as you're listening to this, we are all happily at Keenan Stadium. We're not still stuck in security. We're all hooked up with not too many major technical issues getting you ready for a 7 o'clock kickoff. But it also means that Ryan and I made it without killing each other.
Huge victory.
And we have survived. That means we have survived another road trip together. I just want to make sure right now, as we're going through this show, that we're fully prepared. Now, Ryan and I, we went on 2 big roadies last year. We went to Weddington. That was our get-to-know-you road trip, like week 2 of the season. And then we ended up at Shelby in the playoffs. The concern both times was food, and quite frankly, we did not do well either time. The first time was a colossal failure. The second time was saved, I think, by a Zaxby's or a Checkers, whatever that is.
That was Checkers, yeah.
That was Checkers. Was that where they threw the sauce at you, or was that Zaxby's where they threw the sauce?
That was Zaxby's. That was the Weddington trip and Zaxby's, yeah.
What are the plans for Chapel Hill?
Well, I think we should play it safe and go before the game.
I agree.
And I mean, so hopefully we've already consumed at this point, but I mean, four corners is always a good option.
Is it still open? Because they've been closing stuff left and right on Franklin Street. But wings at 4 corners might work.
I don't know. I don't know if I have not been told that it was closed, so I am not sure.
Do we get Desmond a plate?
Yeah.
I don't know about that. He called Drake May a Heisman candidate last Friday night. Joe, what time are you leaving? This is important.
I live on the eastern side of Guilford County, almost in Alamance County, and I'm probably going to leave about 4:15, 4:30, simply because I just want to make sure I get there and everything's set up. And if I push it, there's an accident on 40 or 54, and I pay for it. If I leave early, I end up standing around waiting for them to let us into the stadium. But of the 2 alternatives, I think I'll take that one.
Okay. All right. So Joe's going to be taken care of. Ryan and I will be leaving earlier than that because if something bad's going to happen, it's going to happen to us. So,
yeah, let me know which way you're going. I'll go the other way. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not good.
It is, yeah.
The other thing, and this is very important, I've ridden with both of you, but the rule in my car is if I have to drive, then that means my passenger is the DJ. If we're assuming that the other person has good musical taste. Now, that's not a problem with Ryan. That's how we bonded. Ryan is a hip hop savant, and I want to know more about the more modern rap. So, what is on your playlist? I have already texted you. to create something for tomorrow. You're the DJ. What are we listening to on our trip?
Definitely listening to the new Nas album.
Oh yeah, King's Disease 3.
That'll be on there. So for something a little newer, might throw in some Babyface Ray.
See, I don't even know what that is. That's great.
Yeah. And for some hype music, I'll probably throw in the new Jeezy album as well.
There's a new Jeezy album?
There is.
This is so good. Now, these kind of questions, Joe's laughing. Joe's on camera laughing because you got to understand that ever since meeting Ryan, things have changed. I posted the other day to my social media that stupid little Spotify, what have you been listening to for the past year? It might as well have been titled, You've Been Hanging Out with Ryan Stone. Because in between, Joe and I are both serious Springsteen guys. And like in between all the rock stuff that I listen to, and heck, I just went to see the Iron Maiden show.
Nice.
But my dominant song was a Moneybag Yo song. And that's when I knew that my life was on a different track than what it was a year ago. And I don't know if it's for the better. It's the same stuff that my middle schooler Riley listens to, but it is just amazing. So you have ruined / enhanced my music collection, but my Spotify is a mess. I'm surprised I didn't get a termination of account letter. Anyway, we're assuming that we got through it without anything bad happening on the passenger seat. I'm assuming we've eaten somewhere. If it's another Zaxby's, I will slap somebody. Anyway,
Four Corners is open. I did just look it up.
All right. So we've got some sort of a plan.
Choice made.
Guys, let's talk about, before we move on, let's talk about what we saw last Friday night. The first half. Let's talk about the first half before it got messy. I don't recall seeing that flawless execution on offense at the high school level. It's been a while, and I can't really name who it might have been. It might have been the 2015, 2016 Hendon Hooker teams. But what those guys from Weddington were able to execute in the first half, that was pretty impressive.
Yeah, they came in with a clear game plan of running a lot of crossers to throw the ball, swinging guys out of the backfield on wheel routes, making Grimsley cover the whole field, which is what Grimsley tries to get you to do. And their quarterback, Tyler Budge, just delivered the ball on time to his guys, got him out in space. They had a game plan, and they had Grimsley on its heels defensively. And that was just a great first half performance by Weddington.
Ryan, you said throughout the first half that you thought Grimsley was playing too soft. You had a week to think about it. Do you still think that they were a little too far off?
Yeah, coverage-wise, I think they were way too far back. I mean, I think that was a big adjustment they made in the second half, is they were not given the same amount of cushion that they were given in the first route. But in the first half, I mean, they were letting those guys just run those crossers free. There was no contact, no deterrent on the routes, and the guys were just getting open. I think that was a huge part of what changed in the second half defensively.
And then the second half got kind of messy. And by kinda, I mean it got really messy. And there was one bad, I think we can all agree, Weddington had one really fatal play calling drive where they left entirely too much time on the clock. And then they began to, I guess, show signs of lack of focus. They had some penalties, and they made the mistake of getting the ball in Ryan Stevens' hands and letting him answer. And what Ryan Stevens did, and then Mitchell Summers' ability to stay on his feet. It's something we've seen all year long for the Whirlies, and eventually it propels them to this week's championship game. I suppose, Joe, that the ballot for all area next week for Greensboro is going to have Mitchell Summers on it.
It certainly will. I mean, he is the most fun running back for me to watch in the last few years. there's elusive in space, and we see that from a lot of guys, and there's elusive in the hole, which is what he is. He is hard to get a solid shot on when he's in the hole, and he gets through it. He runs so low, he runs behind his pads, he can bounce laterally in the hole until he has that little bit of daylight, and then once he does, he accelerates. For a guy that size, as small as he is, to be that strong a runner, that's impressive.
Ryan Stevens will also be on a nomination sheet for you. You could put him in almost anywhere. Ryan, I'm starting to think that he's your favorite player that we've watched.
I mean, Mitchell Summers is up there. I mean, Terrell Anderson is up there because every time Terrell Anderson gets his hands on the ball, he's a threat to go to the house just because of how fast and how strong he is. The thing I think might impress me the most about Ryan Stevens is the biggest question about this Grimsley team this season. We knew they were going to be a state contender if one thing happened. It had to be the quarterback step in and take this team to that level. And with all that pressure and having to step in for a guy that went Division I in Alonzo Barnett, he's done it flawlessly. And that's probably the most impressive thing about Ryan Stevens.
His decision-making has been superb thus far. Agree or disagree, Joe?
Oh, for sure. And, maybe a little bit lost in all this for some people is he's coming off of an ACL injury. He got hurt in the opener last season at Southeast Guilford, and a lot was made about him transferring and all of that. Well, he wasn't going to be the starter there because he got hurt. Bryson Serrano was going to be the starter. And Bryson Serrano came from Ragsdale. So, you could play that game all day, but he recovered from that injury, which is a hard one for anybody to come back from. And he learned the offense quickly. And he runs it really well. He knows when to run it, when to hold it, when to give it off. I mean, what they do works because they've got a great offensive line. I wrote about them. It's on our website, and it'll be in Friday's paper. And because he makes great decisions. And that's something that you can teach it, but there has to be feel there, and he's got feel.
It's not the simplest of offenses to learn.
No.
There's a lot of reads that have to be made, and a lot of times he's had to keep the ball kind of regardless of his own safety, and he'll just take off and try to get the edge. More often than not, he has been successful. What do you think, Ryan, was the turning point in Friday's game?
By the way, before I get to that, we're also talking about probably the smallest backfield in the state. Height-wise, I mean, 5'9" and 5'6", and these guys.
It's somewhere between the two, unless they bring Khalil Stimson in to bulldoze a little bit. It is a very small group, but a very hard running group.
Yeah, I think that's impressive in itself as well. But I mean, there's no question the block field goal is what won Grimsley that game. The block field goal and the return, because that return set them up almost all the way near midfield. So there, I think you can say Grimsley special teams defense won that game because they blocked that and returned it almost to midfield, and they blocked the extra point that put them in position to win the game there at the end.
And the dude who blocked it is like the least surprising guy to come up with that play. Like that would, if I had to name 3 suspects sight unseen on who made the play, Khalil Stimson's the first name that's coming out of my mouth there.
Well, and he tweeted out the picture, and I had to retweet it, of his arm that he blocked it with lace marks on his arm. I mean, that says it all right there. But he's a guy who's been their best linebacker and fills in on offense, and he could be the starting tailback at Grimsley a lot of years. He's a strong runner. He's got a little bit of burst, but he does whatever they need him to do. And that says a lot about him, and it says a lot about their program. But, they went into that game thinking they could block some kicks. And, talking to the assistant coaches afterward, one of them told me, Darryl Brown told his guys at halftime, why can't we block a kick in this half? Why can't we go and block one? And they blocked 2. And as Ryan points out, that was the game. That was the difference.
Mitchell Summers did the most unthinkable kind of baller move following the game Friday. I'm circling around while Joe's talking to Darryl. I'm looking for Mitch. I'm just trying to congratulate these young men that I've watched play a few times, shake some hands, whatever like that. Where's Mitch? Nobody knows where Mitch is. Here comes Summers out through that little tunnel, and he's in his street clothes, like he looks fresh, like he's going to a photo shoot. Like he didn't want to stay and get jumped on. He was like, I didn't want to stay and get jumped on and all that kind of stuff. He made the rounds only after he had a chance to put on some nice fresh clothes and look at himself in the mirror. That right there is savvy move for a sophomore, who, by the way, scored the winning points. Yeah.
Yeah, well, Jackson Henry's extra point was the difference, but it was his touchdown. And when football's over, he's going to wrestle, and he's a very good wrestler. And you see that by the way he runs the ball, low leverage, balance. It's all there.
Joe, that's you mispronounced his name. Grimsley, football legend Jackson Henry.
That's right.
That's his full name. I caught up with Jackson after the game, and I told him to make sure that his parents knew that we were calling him the football legend, Jackson Henry. But I was taken aback. Jackson looks every bit of 15.
Yeah.
I am old. He is my entire high school existence not just pales in comparison to these guys, but it's not even a speck of dust on the doormat of life. I mean, Jackson Henry's got that field goal, that game-winning field goal to play on a loop on his phone. He didn't even have to ask a girl to prom.
But does he have a podcast?
He does need a podcast. Jackson, if you're listening, in the age of NIL, I would listen to Grimsley football legend Jackson Henry's podcast.
There you go.
I think see, look at that. It's looking out for the kids no matter what. We are the chief advocates.
Desmond will find a window on Tobacco Sports Radio for such a podcast.
We're not talking to Desmond right now.
Okay.
Desmond's had a rough week. It's not been good. I think Drake May made it a little bit better, but I mean, we'll see where he's at. I'm coming around game time, but yeah, we're not going to involve Desmond too much. He's a little angry with me because the Panthers are trash. Anyway, we're going to take a break. We're going to get you ready for the championship game in our last segment. First, I'm sure there's a way for Ryan to make a few dollars holiday shopping money. When we come back, I want to get some Stone Cold locks. You're listening to the Franchise Players, Tobacco Road Sports Radio.
Franchise players are often referred to as the face of the franchise.
Welcome back to Franchise Players, Tobacco Road Sports Radio. JP Mundy along with Ryan Stone and the great one, Joe Sirera, getting you ready. Coming up in mere minutes, the 4A final. I'm kind of sad, guys. Does this mean football season's over? It's not over for Joe. He gets a game tomorrow.
That's right. Reidsville, football capital of North Carolina.
Well, see, you know how to pronounce their name all the way through correctly, but you got to get okay. But I'm a little sad, but it's cool to have a Triad team involved in this championship game. Before we get to New Bern and what they put on the table, though, Ryan, how'd you do last week?
I believe, I think, 3-1-1 in college, and I think 4-3 in the NFL. So winning weeks on both counts.
So I was very, very glad that I knew you were doing okay because there were no late night tweets that say I hate everyone. So yeah. I figured you were making a little bit of money. Who was your big money? Who was your big winner last week?
Well, I mean,
Georgia was one.
Georgia's first half. We had Michigan -16, and then I'm trying to remember. There was I'm blanking on what the other one
TCU.
was. Well, TCU lost. That was the one loss. I think I might have had the under on the TCU and Kansas State game, I believe.
Okay. And that brings your totals for the season playing the Georgia first half to winnings of around $132 million. So congratulations on the new moat around Stone Estates. And you went over 500 in the NFL. So what do you have for us this week?
Well, all we've got is NFL. No college football games this weekend. So far, if Jimmy Garoppolo hadn't gotten hurt, I could completely understand the 49ers being a 3.5-point favorite against the Buccaneers. But on principle alone, I cannot not take Tom Brady getting 3.5 points against Brock Purdy. And against this Buccaneers defense. I'm going to take Tampa Bay on the road plus 3.5 there.
Right.
And the Giants do not seem like the same team we were seeing a month ago, where they were a consistent team you could count on week in and week out. The Eagles seemed to come back to life last week against Tennessee, so I'm going to take the Eagles minus 6.5 points in that one as well.
Okay,
those are the two I've got so far. Yeah,
I get nervous when you involve Tampa Bay in your bets.
I think that's the first time this season, actually.
Well, okay, now hopefully you end up backing off of those guys. Let's move on to more sure things, which is the fact that, guys, well, here's two things I know about the New Bern Bears. Number one, they're going to run the ball. Number two,
32 pass attempts all season.
I've warned you, Ryan. These home uniforms are atrocious. That was my first question to Coach Brown this week. Are you home or away?
I gotta say, their helmets with the logo kind of remind me of like a country, the flag of a country. Like with all the World Cup action I've been seeing lately.
They went with kind of a military unit theme because of their location. And I think that was what they were trying to play off of. I like the helmets, but from what I've seen of the jerseys on Huddle, I thought that Grimsley's gray, blue on gray, Greensboro script jerseys were really bad. And then last year or 2 years ago, I had Grimsley at Southern Pines Pinecrest, and Pinecrest had black jerseys with Kelly green numerals. They were fun to read.
That was a awful uniform to have to read.
That was like the Southern. That's like one of Eric Rainey's Southwest experiments.
Yes.
Not good at all. It's amazing that we've been talking about bad uniforms. We have not once mentioned Todd Willard because he has come around to the error of his ways.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Well, now that he can afford multiple options now, so it's easier.
Oh yeah, they've got the Color Rush option. They've got all kinds of stuff over at Easter Side.
They've earned it.
I get. You know what? I want to say, Coach Studevant's earned it.
Yep.
I said the assistant coaches have earned it.
Okay.
Nothing. I'm just waiting on a text from Lord Vader now. What's special about this New Bern offense, Joe?
Just that ability to run the ball when the opponent knows you're only going to run the ball and to run it that effectively. I mean, they are, I think, fourth or fifth highest single season rushing total in state history with a game to go. And even if Grimsley beats them, they're going to run for some yardage Friday night. If you're a Grimsley fan, don't panic when they're running 11 or 12 play drives and they're picking up yardage. It's what they're good at. They've got athletes. They are physical and big up front. They're going to run the ball and they're going to dare you to stop them. And it's pretty simple. And defensively, they've got some men up front. They've got KJ Sampson, a defensive tackle who's committed to Florida State, and a young man next to him, Tavion Cox, who isn't quite as big, so he doesn't have those offers yet. But boy, he's good too. I mean, this is another challenge for Grimsley. And if I'm Grimsley, I think a little bit about Porter Ridge last season, and it's a different type of offense, but that ground-oriented offense where you have to play assignment football for 48 minutes at least, and you don't have the ball very often, boy, that can get a little scary and a little bit nerve-wracking.
I had a local coach who I won't name, tell me that one thing that he wishes he would have done in a previous matchup against an option-type team was onside kick it every time.
Yeah.
To kind of reduce the potential amount of time that opposing offense would be on there. That's a heck of a risk, but it's not the worst idea.
No, you're shortening drives. I mean, and you're maybe saving your defense a little bit, because if the other team's going to score anyway and they do it quicker, they're not on the field as long. The Northern Guilford first-round playoff game against Lake Norman last year was a classic example of that. I mean, Northern Guilford moved the ball and scored just about every time they had the ball. They threw one interception at the 3 where they could have gone up 14-0 and probably would have put away the game early. Instead, Lake Norman takes the ball 21 plays, 97 yards later, they're in the end zone, and you're demoralized. And you start thinking, God, we can't make a mistake. We can't get a penalty. We can't turn the ball over. We can't do anything, because if we do, we're not going to see the ball for 9 or 10 minutes. And that can be scary. And onside kicking, that's a different approach. That's the approach, but I can see it.
Well, that's going to be kind of interesting, because Grimsley already doesn't kick it deep very often.
Yeah, they pooch
it down the middle. So I mean, they already kind of give up decent starting field position. Plus, Grimsley kind of has the kind of offense that you can trust to do something like that with, because if you're going to do that, you got to score more often than not. So Grimsley has the offense where they could pull off something like that.
Yep.
My only concern, quote unquote, would be that you have New Bern go and do one of these 14 play drives.
Mm-hmm.
And whether it's stopped or not, Grimsley gets the ball, and on play number 2, Summers hits one of his home runs. And you have to throw your defense back on the field again.
Yeah.
Now, and I just, I don't know how you manage a game like that, but there's certainly a lot more to think about this week than normal for Darryl Brown and his staff.
I don't think you overthink it either. I think you kind of have to be who you are, and you're not saving anything for the next game. This is it. Yeah. Everybody's going to play until they physically cannot play anymore. And, I think there's an element of that to it too, that, you do what you do and see what happens.
This New Bern team has been incredibly dominant. I mean, they're winning games by an average of 35 points a game. I mean, their defense, their offense, it's one of those games that, Grimsley's going to have to play. They're going to have to play their best. And I mean, the last time we saw them in a state championship, that was one of the best defensive performances I've ever seen. So if they can get another performance like that out of their defense, that might be what they need.
Yeah, the Tamori Thompson Invitational. I remember that one very, very well. I thought one of the best adjustments offensively that the Whirlies made was moving both Jakarian Maynard and Summers into the backfield at the same time. Normally, if Jakarian's in, they like to put him in the slot, as you well know, and then either run or fake that orbit sweep. But I think it gave at least the linebacker core for the opposition something to think about with both of those backs in there, along with a running quarterback.
Yeah. They have to defend, and if that happens, then you have 2 receivers. I mean, that's the beauty to me of the Grimsley offense, is that you have to defend every player on the field. Now, I'm waiting for them to slip Nolan Albright out of the backfield, off the line as a tight end down the seam, and maybe that happens in this game. But if you double either of their receivers, you're lightening up the box and they can run on you. And if you load the box and you're going to give them one-on-one with Terrell Anderson or Alex Taylor, good luck.
Yeah, and I believe it was they played over safety over the top of both Anderson and Taylor and still lost last week.
Yeah.
And I guess if you can't contain the run, or if you have to bring up creep a safety up, that's when Alex Taylor starts licking his chops, because he's about to run his fade, or Anderson's about to run that little double move that Ryan likes so much.
Yeah.
They didn't run it last week, I don't think.
If they hit him on the slant.
Yeah, he took that slant and was gone. There was no question.
Was that last week or 2 weeks ago where he hit the slant at the 40 and he caught it and I said touchdown Grimsley on the air. I broke every broadcasting rule there is, but I mean there was no way.
You only break the rule if you're wrong.
Yeah. I wasn't going to be wrong because Brian started laughing on air because Terrell just bodied the guy.
Yeah. He took one high step with his knee where he just sort of ran the guy over with his knee and then just kept going. It was over.
I just can't. That was the Huff game. Yeah, I believe that was it.
Yeah, you're right.
But that was hilarious.
It seems like in each of these playoff games, the tough ones that they've had, the opponent has mostly taken away one of those two, but the other one has killed them, and the running game has killed them. They've been able to run the ball against pretty much everybody. And boy, that as good as New Bern is at what they do, as good as the team Reidsville's playing, East Duplin is at what they do with their wing tee, they do one thing pretty much. Grimsley can do a lot of things and has athletes doing a lot of things, great football players, and that is really, really tough to defend. I'd rather be able to sell out against a triple option than have to just guess where they're going to go on each play, knowing that if I guess wrong and they make a play, it's over.
I keep on marveling at the fact that Grimsley for the last 4 weeks has faced some sort of adversity where it's high school football. We see this all the time. These kids just blink. They start running in, quicksand, right? It just keeps getting worse and it gets that snowball effect. And somehow Daryl's kids have been able just to keep playing. And I'm like, it's hard for me to do that at age 50. What are these teenagers are just against all odds? We thought that Grimsley lost. There wasn't anybody in that booth that thought Grimsley was going to win that game, much less be in a position to win that game last week, except them.
People talk, coaches, and it's a cliche sometimes about life lessons and learning them and learning to overcome things. And we're seeing it play out with this Grimsley team. We've seen it with some other teams before, but this team in particular, you're right. It just seems like every week it's something different. They find a different way to win. They overcome a different challenge. It's hard not to feel like this is a team that is just going to figure out some way to do it against New Bern, whatever it is.
They answer. It's what they do.
Yeah.
Yep, exactly.
What do you guys think worst case scenario would be for Grimsley tonight?
You don't want to go down by more than one possession. That's the key. If you go down, it can't be by more than one possession because that's what happened in Northern Guilford last year. That's what happened at Grimsley against Porter Ridge because the game will get shorter and shorter and you won't have enough possessions. That's the only thing that if I were Grimsley, I would be really worried about. And I don't think that happens unless Grimsley throws interceptions or fumbles.
I would,
Ryan. Go ahead.
I would have to agree. I mean, I think you against a triple option team, you just can't put yourself in a hole. And I think that's what they have to be on guard for.
And before we go, I want to point out, and maybe you guys can think of something real quick, stuff that we're definitely going to see in tonight's game. Number one, we are going to see a fake extra point. Okay? And let's just say, I have not been on Grimsley's campus for anything but a game situation this season. I'm just saying that's my intuition, is that we haven't seen Ryan Stevens throw from his holder position in 3 weeks. It's coming again. Yeah. That's a definite. And we are going to see a Mitchell Summers home run. What do you guys think?
Ryan?
Jamal Jarrett's going to continue the dominance we've seen him on the last few weeks. I think since the calendar turned in November, Jamal Jarrett has just ratcheted it up to a level on that defensive line that we had not seen him play at before. I think he has really learned the position now, and he is starting to become everything that all the top scouts thought he was going to be.
All right. And Joe, what are we definitely going to see tonight?
At least one touchdown, catch and run each for Alex Taylor and Terrell Anderson, and a something to watch is we haven't seen punter Alex Taylor take off or throw a pass this year from punt formation. And Jalen Rayner did that to somebody earlier in the year at a big point in the Mount Tabor game where Mount Tabor fell asleep a little bit, and he ran for about 40 yards in their regular season game, which was a much closer game than the playoff game. And, I think any opponent who doesn't play punt safe against Grimsley is just asking for that to happen.
Oh, wow. So that's great work there from Joe Stradamus. I can't believe we've made it this far into the broadcast without mentioning Stone Stradamus, who predicted 3 things in game last week, and they all came true. So hopefully our reign of luck continues. But guys, the limo's here. It's time to get out to the tarmac, get on the Tobacco Road Sports Radio private jet, and get out to Keenan Stadium, plug in the aux cord, Ryan. It's time for the high school football game of the year. Grimsley versus New Bern coming up next on Tobacco Road Sports Radio. We'll see you in a bit.